Have you heard of the Sirt food diet? Well, it's actually not a restrictive diet at all. It's all about specific foods you should be adding to your diet. You may know some big names who've actually followed this, like a world famous singer, which we can't mention here, but she reportedly lost 100 pounds using this exact same method in 2019. Mixed martial artist Conor McGregor claims to have used this as well. Now the two international best-selling authors who created the Sirt food diet, Glenn Madden and Aidan Goggins, have a new, even more incredible way to get these potent Sirt foods to all Americans by combining them all into one revolutionary, powerful drink. It's called Ultimate Sirt Juice. It was designed to help you lose weight, support your overall health, and give you more energy to do the things you love. Go get your supply of Ultimate Sirt Juice now with a $20 discount by going to getsirt.com/inspired. That's getsirt.com/inspired, or click on a link in the description box down below.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied, naturally and automatically, by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace, peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government, which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Inspired live stream. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024. And my friends, we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. It's good to see you all. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in on Rumble. Thank you for tuning in on X. I want to jump right into it. These kinds of speeches, think about it from, I always say history has to be looked at with the proper perspective and context of the times. Think about 1958, people talking about what is unfolding and what is about to unfold in a way like this versus the overall consciousness and awareness of the public. I mean, this was an alien speech if you think about it in 1958. Of course, today we're past all these points, way, way, way past. Now, what is interesting to me is that, I get these comments a lot. I get a lot of these, we get a lot of these messages and people tell us, this is all over, this New World Order thing. It's never going to happen. They gave up. they're not doing this anymore. They're not pursuing it anymore. And you know, I love to have visions, right? I love to envision a better future. I can see things before it happen. I can see things before they happen. Of course, I can envision that, but at the same time, I'm also not negating what's right in front of us. And the only thing that has really significantly happened on the part of the perpetrators with this whole New World Order agenda is they have brilliantly rebranded. And that's what they continually do, right? In the 80s, the 90s, they talked a lot about the New World Order. Every president, prime minister, they just spewed that out. It was like a trend. And they were, of course, talking what they were talking about. And then they started rebranding it. And then it turned into the climate thing and the sustainable and the UN Agenda 2030 and the sustainable goals and the Great Reset and the 15-minute cities and all of that. But the truth is that the agenda is still here. And the reason why I'm not getting tired of talking about this is because hundreds of thousands of people are joining us in this awakening journey every single day, and they are not up to speed on many of these things. And because there is such a plethora of information out there and of speakers out there that willingly or knowingly or unknowingly misguide and mislead people, I do like to get back to the basics and just say, hey, listen, the reason why this awakening is happening because here was and is an agenda that is not being openly communicated to the people. It is being shown, but not openly to the people. And this is where they want to lead all our brothers and sisters and the world. This is what you need to know. And here are some much better solutions, what we can do, what you could do, how you could invest your attention. So I want to look at with you all and something that is shareable at these goals that they have been putting out. And I want to get through them with you. I think it's highly important and something that we can share. Now, all of these goals that I'm about to share with you are policies and enshrined goals that they put in government policies. They put it into bills, into laws, into non-government organizations like the UN and their sub-organizations like the WEF and all the others that are talking about this, that are highly influential organizations. When you read their documents, this is what they're working on. A one world government, a one world digital cashless currency, right? Digital cashless currency. We talked about this a lot. A one world central bank. And today, I mean, this is what the past wars of the past decades have been really about. If you go back and look at every country that was invaded or that we were at war with, you will find out that almost every single one of them did not have a central bank before, and now they have one. And of course, it's all controlled, by the way, by the same people. There's only a few really big banks that control all the others. You know, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the Bank for International Settlements, the World Bank. There's not that many that ultimately pull all the strings with the others. A one world military, a one world religion. Now I want to get to that here. I think there are certain things that we can really see clearer right now than others. We can see the one world digital cashless currency. We can see the digital cashless currency push very, very strongly in most nations. Now, the thing with this is, even if it was a one world currency, it could have different names in different countries and regions, but the back end of the system would all be the same currency, right? So this is interesting. This is just, they're just gradually bringing this in. So we can see that clearly now. We can't see so clearly a one world military because currently various national militaries are still fighting with each other. We can't see that as clearly. The one world religion is an interesting one. We can see that push more. The push for the destruction of the current religions. It was up until recently, you had you had, the criticism of Islam and sort of the violent Muslims through terrorism. You had that, right? You had the slow and gradual the destruction of the church, and especially in Europe, because it's pretty much only Protestant and Catholic all over Europe, mainly Catholic, the destruction of the church as an institution. And with that, you had the destruction of the religion, very, very much so. Christianity has really, really, and probably more so the church as a religious institution, really, really had a hard time over the last 50, 60 years. Then recently, especially through the flare-up of this new conflict in the Israel-Gaza region, you have worldwide very, very harsh criticism of Judaism. So that has come back into the mix. And so when you look at these three big religions, and there's others, but when you look at that, you can see that there is the stage is being set. The idea is to ultimately destroy all these religions and replace them with the one world Luciferian religion, with the light bringer that's going to come on. And basically everybody's going to say, well, we were all misguided, and here we have the real thing. That is the goal. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying that is the goal. We can see that. The end of national sovereignty, now that is very visible to a lot of people now. They see it in their nations. The eradication of borders, the eradication of cultures, the eradication of languages, the eradication of traditions, that is openly practiced, celebrated, and even codified by policies and by laws and by a clear preference to, in many countries, a clear preference for the immigrant over the native-born population and the native population. That's now openly visible, completely. And of privately owned property. It's another thing that is a huge trend that if people put two and two together, they can see this visibly. In the United States, if you look at the economy, I'm going to put this here for a moment and blow it up again. If you look at the economy in the United States, especially in the last year and a half, and the way it has developed, the real estate market should have corrected by at least 30 or 40%. It would have, under same economic, conditions in all the times before, but it isn't now. And there's a specific reason for it. The real estate currently, most properties, most single-family homes, and duplexes and whatnot, they're being bought up by corporations that pay cash. They're mainly corporations that originate from the big funds like Vanguard and BlackRock and the others. They own these corporations. They go out into the market and they pay cash for these properties, and they pay oftentimes either the asked price or above the asked price. Now, once they do that, they don't just put them in the portfolio and hold them and sell them again. They don't want to sell them. They will just rent them out because they want to price out homeowners in order to end private property. So this is a big deal, and this has been happening all over Europe for a very long time. The home ownership rate is going down. People can't afford to buy homes. They can't afford the mortgages, of course. And this trend is continuing. That's why the real estate market isn't correcting, because big corporations are flooding the market with cash. But it is not a reflection of people actually, of home ownership for individuals increasing. It is decreasing. The idea is to not allow you to own your home any longer, because you're in greater control. Of course, we can talk about the illusion of ownership / renting from the government because of all the taxes and regulations. That's a whole different story. Okay, we can talk about that too. Then we have the end of the family unit. We've seen this too clearly, the destruction over the last more than 100 years now. The feminist movement really brought this to a whole new level. And while I completely understand that there were some very, very important milestones, the movement in and of itself was funded by nefarious institutes and organizations. It was clearly designed to have a specific purpose, to bring the women and the mothers away from the family, away from the children, away from this most sacred thing that only a mother can do, and bring them first into the workforce as another taxpayer, by the way, but also to disrupt the family system, to disrupt all of these things, and then the quote unquote emancipation movement, which was all co-opted. And rather than really being about the true empowerment of women, about the concept, historically speaking, for example, of matriarchy, of the ultimate decision makers, the grandmothers, like it was in the Native American clans, this has been brought to a, free sexuality, free everything. And that really was the destruction of the family unit. Today, you have more divorced and single parent households than not. And it shows all over the place. Then, of course, the depopulation, population control. So depopulation and population control are hand in hand. Depopulation is the overall reduction of people on Earth, right? And there are a few numbers that have been floating around for many years. Some go as low as 500 million as being, like the Georgia Guidestones that were conveniently destructed a couple of years ago. The 500 million is like that should be or under 1 billion. And then you have the 1 billion, the golden billion, and the 1.5 billion. But ultimately, it's somewhere between the 500 million and 1.5 billion people range. That's what they want. And so, whatever the real number on Earth is of people, we of course don't know. I've never went and counted. I don't trust the census, but it's far more than 1.5 billion. And then population control, which means that the goal is to be in complete control of reproduction. And of course, China had a one-child policy for the longest time, right, where you could only have one child and had to pay hefty fines if you had another one, or fees. And population control goes beyond just regulating how many children families can have, but really regulating reproduction and ultimately taking over reproduction, right? Then we have digital ID and digital health passport, which is a huge, huge thing that's been since the COVID era. This has come up. And this basically tracks movement and makes sure that you can only move about if you fulfill all the requirements that whatever the requirements will be, medically speaking, regular checkups, inoculations, medicine that you might be put on. And of course, this all can be traced and tracked in real time 24/7. The nanotechnology for this is in place. It can be done now. There's enough doctors out there talking about how wonderful it is that they can now monitor on their computer whether a patient is really taking their medicine and interfere if they're not. Of course, when the patient is also a recipient of government benefits of one kind or the other, then the first step will be you either do take your medication, please do take your antidepressants, or you will lose your benefits, right? Okay, let's move forward here. Universal basic income. I kind of teed it up here. The idea is that everybody gets that's their goals. And we're going to get to the solutions, my friends, but we need to know this, and we need to help those who haven't put the pieces together or haven't been in the movement long enough, or who haven't seen the documents, who haven't done this. We need to guide them so they can do this research for themselves. Universal basic income is something that's been talked about all over the place. It's been pioneered and tested in many places. And of course, it's given to immigrants in many countries in Europe and to a certain extent in North America. Immigrants are getting now going into Germany if they are asylum seekers from a war zone or just alleged asylum seekers. There's huge benefits, which is basically universal basic income, which means you will get a certain amount of money, digital money, and you won't have to work for it, do anything for it, and ultimately that is to pacify the disruption that or the dislocation from the workspace because of takeover of AI and technology, which is taking over, in the next until the end of the decade. It might take over between 40 and 80% of all the jobs out there. That is a kind of a horrific projection, but the universal basic income is supposed to be unconditional. Everybody gets it, no matter their social and economical status, and then they'll be happy and don't have to worry, and they can only do what they want to do. And there's all kinds of ways to paint this as a rosy idea. Never in the history of government has a government ever given, and where would that money come from? In order for the government to give somebody something, they have to take it from somebody else. That's the only way it works, right? Because that's how it works. And so the ultimate idea is, of course, to put all kinds of conditions on it. For those of you who have studied the history of Social Security numbers, for example, was a huge, that was the Federal Reserve Act, the establishment of the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security numbers were kind of all in the same period of a couple of years. And they said, oh, it's never going to be used to identify you. Oh, it's never going to be, you're never going to be restricted by it. And people were really opposing the idea of Social Security numbers. Well, today, I mean, you can't buy a phone without a Social Security number. You can't do practically anything of any significance without a Social Security number, which just shows you how it always goes, right? Any power that is given is going to be completely and absolutely used and abused. Let's move forward in this list here. Chipped society for travel purchase, and chipped is sort of an old word now, because it's with the advancement, if you will, at least from our perspective of what we can see of nanotechnology. The word chipping is really kind of antiquated here. It's much more sophisticated than that. But let's say the merger of technology and biology, that is the key here, right? So and people have already done this. They implanted those chips that opens doors and that allows them to pay. And so the merger of biology and technology that will allow, of course, 24/7 surveillance of everything, but also make it impossible for you to do an anonymous purchase, go somewhere to a flea market and buy something, because there is no cash. And the only way you can purchase is with the technology that's implanted into you. That is, and then, of course, that goes into everything, the travel, the purchase. And then you combine that with programmable digital money, where the money isn't just money. It's not a nominal worth, but it is a programmable worth, which means that it can buy certain goods, but it can't buy others, right? So you might be able to go out and buy certain foods and water and whatnot, but you can't go out and buy meat, or you can't go out and buy gold, or you can't go out and buy whatever, cigarettes, if you want that, right? Connected to all of that, the goal is to have a world social credit system. And it's much like a debt credit system, where how you can manage debt is currently being evaluated by the credit bureaus all over the world. The social credit system is already, the soft credit system is already in place through the social media. Deplatforming, debanking has already happened, so it is in place. There is something like a social credit score out there. It's just not openly displayed. It's not codified in the law yet. But of course, since the movement of communication onto the internet and social media, since the internet becoming the main town square for information and knowledge, the credit system has moved there, which means if you were spreading mis or disinformation in the eyes of the social media companies that are in cahoots with the certain three-letter agencies, then your account was banned. You were your ability to earn money through the platforms or online was limited. You were deplatformed, debanked by PayPal and whatnot. And that is already a social credit system. It isn't calling itself that, but that's what it is. Of course, the real social credit system will be an open, openly displayed, and the government will be the ones who give you the score based on all life activities that, of course, can be digitally monitored. And so they will tell you, well, you've been good. You get your 1 week vacation. You can even leave your state, can go into another state, and you get 100 flight points. And if you save them up in 2 years, you can even fly somewhere. Government raised children. I've said this before. The idea that the government doesn't just raise the children, but actually raise the children, produce them, artificial incubators, and ultimately that's going to have to be heavily regulated. The government's going to have to step in, and all this nefarious stuff that's going on. Now the government has to step in and make sure that it's all good and proper. And so that's the idea, to limit and ultimately outlaw natural reproduction. This is no joke. This is all which you can find this in the documents. And sometimes you have to go to the organizations that are funded by the government and look at their documents and policies. And that is indirect support of those policies. If the government is funding certain organizations and their goals display what I'm talking about here, then the government is supporting these policies. That's just how it goes. Government-controlled education, of course, we're way past that point. In most countries, the government sets all policies for education, the curriculum, and everything. United States has a certain states in America have a huge homeschooling tradition, and the education system and the ability from the legal standpoint for parents to actually do their own educating is still there, and it's sort of still liberal in terms of actually free, not the new liberal term, but that's the curriculums today in any public school is dictated by the federal government. The end of private transportation. We've heard a lot about this too. This is all connected to dense, or let's say the replacement. There has been a huge push in the last 20 years to replace people from rural areas, from out in the country, from having their own space into the cities, the creation of 15-minute cities that are everywhere in every state. Even in a state like Tennessee, we have Chattanooga as the prime example of a emerging 15-minute city. And so within those zones where people will live, they will eventually phase out private transportation. They're already putting a charge in many countries. Italy has those programs. They put a charge. If you drive into the city center with your car, you pay a lot of money for that. So people don't do that. Eventually, they stop owning those cars. Eventually, they want to outlaw car ownership. And so you will only have public transportation, which of course will only bring you to the designated zones. It does not require a lot of imagination to know how this will go. This is I'm talking about the hypothetical outcome if this were to go through. This is what they want. Okay, let's move forward here. I think it's really important actually to talk about these points. The end of individual business ownership. Of course, we've seen this all over the place again with the destruction of the middle class, which is the prime example of individual business ownership, small and middle class businesses that employ somewhere from 3 to, 20, 30 people that have been the backbone of real economy and real economic value and wealth, job creation, job security. That is being destroyed by law now, politically, and through the laws and codes that are being put into place. Of course, business in and of itself won't go away, but what we have seen is in the last years, I've observed that all former, at least pretend rules of monopolies, all governments always claim we're not allowing monopolies. That's why we're looking into mergers. That's why we have to approve mergers of certain corporations or purchases of certain corporations. When one corporation becomes too big and is actually the quasi has a monopoly over a certain market, the government is supposed to step in and say no. And this, of course, has not happened at all. Amazon owns the market. BlackRock, Vanguard own markets. They don't just own assets, they own markets. And so do other corporations in other fields. And this is, of course, the key. You want to have this state/corporation marriage where a few huge worldwide corporations are in charge of everything. And this is this is kind of what we have been seeing over the last years, really emerging. Restriction of non-essential travel. I kind of touched already on that. Controlled settlement zones, right? 15-minute cities. I already explained that too, which, people will be seduced to move into the city because the cities will be greenified. There will be a nicer place to live in. It'll be more pleasant. You'll have more a feel of nature. It will be artificial nature, but it will be nature. And there will be less traffic, especially from combustion engines, which is a good thing, by the way. Not that I'm in favor of the current trend of electric vehicles that is emerging. There's probably a place for that too, but I'm not a fan of, given the technology that's really out there. But the combustion engines in cities are really just horrific for health and the air quality. And we have so much better technology that's hidden, right? But that's what will happen, and people will be seduced into staying in their 15-minute circle where they can go to work, they can go to the coffee shop, they can do their grocery shopping. It's wonderful, it's green, and but if you want to leave, however, well, it won't be all that free any longer. You will have to check in with your implant everywhere you go. That's just part of it, right? That's just, you'll just every place you walk into, it'll just have facial recognition, and you'll check in with your chip to make sure you didn't steal that hand, and you'll just be tracked everywhere you go. And if you don't say anything that's wrong, and if you keep your head down, and if you stay within the mainstream box of thinking, you'll be fine. It won't be a problem. Of course, if you're like me and many others, you won't be able to function in such a society, neither will you have the desire to function in such a society. The end of private farming and raising livestock. We can observe that, of course, through the farmers' protests over the last years, this year, everywhere. It is so clear that anything that resembles farming, whether it is done in a good or not so good way, and anything that resembles local independence through farming and raising livestock is being fought, is being tariffed, is being regulated out of business. And if that doesn't work, then properties are being seized and laws are being put into place so they can't do it, or they restrict them from using water, which they need. There's a million ways to do it, but they're doing it, right? And that is happening all over the place. Okay, and then we have restricted land use, of course, which will mean that, people won't be able to just go hiking anywhere at any time where they wish to. It will be very, very clearly regulated, because the truth is that the self-proclaimed elites want all that beautiful natural space to themselves. They don't want us peasants there. And then a ban of all non-synthetic drugs and natural medicine, which that is something that people can observe too. This has been a trend for a very long time. The war against the true medicine, where we find everything we need in nature, and against the medical system that is looking to create subscription models that loves nothing more than treating sickness. They love to treat sickness and keep it there, rather than healing spiritually, physically, mentally, and using natural medicine, herbs, and the likes, and healing modalities. So this is, and there's a few other points that we could add to this, but in a nutshell, this is the agenda that is being played out in so many words and so many ways by the infiltration and through the infiltration of all governments. Now, this agenda, as I said, it used to be known under the New World Order name, and the alternative media, if you will, and authors have done a good job at promoting it in a way so that people could grasp what this is all about. In the last years, this has been rebranded and rebranded and rebranded over and over again, right? You don't hear people talk about global warming anymore. It was rebranded into climate change, right? You don't hear people talk about the New World Order anymore. It was rebranded into sustainable goals. The Great Reset didn't go over so well. People didn't like that. But sustainable, they love sustainable. Sounds great. We should have sustainable. We should have regenerative. And they're, of course, using these words and redefining what that means. So the quintessential question, have they stopped? No, they have not stopped at all. They're rebranding it. Have they been weakened? Greatly, greatly through our attention. And because we're steering people to the right information, which then allows them to ask the right question, am I in support of this or not? Because they're presenting these things in the most wonderful and green way possible, which speaks to a lot of people, because most of us really don't want to hurt the earth. Most of us don't want to destroy what we call nature. Most of us don't want to do things that harm each other. We just don't want to. It's not in our heart. And so they speak to that element. Of course, they have perverted it, right? They're talking about what? The elimination of what gas? Think about it. Go and study what carbon is, how it pertains to life itself, and what that means, the elimination of carbon. What does that really mean? Right? The purpose here is to help those who are who haven't put these pieces together yet, who maybe haven't read the books or the documents or haven't followed it, and show them this is what most governments today are quietly or now very openly pushing for. The people don't want it. And in every single instance, when you show it to them, black on white, and you give them the information, they can verify it for themselves. They will say, I don't want that. This is not the way to go. What if these people really that are pushing these agendas, what if they really want a positive change? What would they tell us? Because what is most obviously what we could and should do? For example, without changing much of the structure of what is happening right now, if in just the United States alone, the governments, local, federal, and whatnot, were to encourage and maybe even help with the real greenification of landscapes, with gardens, permaculture, with fruit trees, with the inspiration for people to actually plant pollinating plants, right, that help with the bee population, which is absolutely integral for nature everywhere and for the health of nature. Encouraging people to quit using pesticides, which under a permaculture model is necessary, and with that help clean up the soil, help heal the soil, help heal the water. What if actually governments were to encourage people to use their backyards for this? What if they were to support the spread of proper information and education on this subject? So if we could only inspire the growing of beneficial plants, both for food, for nature, and for the whole system, and with that have the ripple effect of better soil, healthier water, healthier people because they eat really good food, more independence. Rather than picking up the processed garbage from the grocery store, they pick their own food from their own gardens. Imagine within a few short years, we could inspire a mass movement that would actually really help with the supposed goals that these people are having in terms of having better ecology and a healthier earth. But of course, those are not the real goals here. If they were, that would be the first thing that they would do. There's so many other things we could encourage, and we are encouraging. So without this information, and by pretending and perpetuating a false storyline that they stopped, they're not doing it anymore, the New World Order is dead, they've all been arrested, it's all just a movie playing out, these are all just actors with masks. Clones and masks have been around for freaking 100 years and more, my friends. You know how many 20th century world leaders, if you go back and study, were probably replaced by actors and masks? Maybe clones? This is not new. They're just repackaging and reselling a story to pacify the population. Oh, they've all been shipped over to Gitmo. They had their secret military tribunals. And the chemtrails that are still out there, by the way, that are being sprayed, they're just a holograph. They're not really happening. The people that are suddenly dying are not really dying. And the continual poisoning of the air, the water, and the foods is not really happening. It's just a movie. Eat the GMO popcorn. I can't with that. It's so clear, but also people are suffering, so they want that false hope. For some reason, it speaks to them, and I get it. But I will tell you that real hope turns into real faith, turns into real knowing, turns into real inspired action. That is so much more powerful. Real thinking, and actually our ability to claim responsibility, even if we didn't do these things, we at least allowed them to happen. So our claiming of responsibility and cleaning up our own mess and then helping to clean up the bigger mess, that is so much more empowering to me than following some false narrative of some story that will end up inevitably in a huge disappointment like it has over and over again. And I'm not saying the good people behind the scenes are not doing good things. Of course, because they're doing good things in front of the scenes. You're doing good things. Millions of others are. So of course they're all over the place. There's no doubt about it. But this narrative that a few select white hats are cleaning up the mess for us is so dangerous. It's happened so often in history. The false, the psyop, right? The psychological operation to pacify people and keep them inactive. When a few simple steps that you could take and a few simple things that you could do and we could all do, and we are doing, by the way, have such a bigger impact. And then we don't have to rely on secret figures and secret groups that we don't know nothing about, that we're not a part of. We don't even know what their ultimate goals are. How should we? We were not invited to the party. But this is still out there. These agendas are still working. And even though some of the big players have disappeared, they've been replaced with other players. And yes, we're having a huge impact. But please don't fall. This is such a tactic of war. A tactic of war. The tactic of war is appear weak when you're strong and appear strong when you're weak, right? Always deception. Always playing a false card. The art of war is what these entities live by. Lao Tzu, the art of Sun Tzu, not the art of war. Very, very famous book. It's been used by pretty much every military strategist and every serious politician ever. And so forget that. We're not going to get the truth there. The truth, we have to find ourselves. We have to calibrate to the truth. We have to be the truth. And my hope isn't hope anymore. It's knowing. I know what happens. I've seen it happen in so many people. And I'm so, Christine and I are so grateful to have been a part of some people's journey on this. When the penny drops and when something shifts on the inside in those people, and they walk a path towards greater healing and more wholeness and personal responsibility and self-reliance, when that begins to happen, these people become powerhouses. They inspire hundreds and thousands of others. That is real. I don't need a freaking government solution. I don't need a savior to come in on the white horse and only that person can fix it. How often have you seen this in the personality cults? Two huge personality cults that are out there right now, the Elon Musk and the Donald Trump cults. And have you actually looked into the very, this white knight savior X Twitter thing? Who owns Twitter? You know how much of Twitter, or now X, is owned by Elon Musk? All of 20%. The rest is owned by mainly unknown investors. Mainly unknown. We know of Sequoia Capital. Look up Sequoia Capital, their clientele, their history, their policies. Fidelity Investments, look up them. And other similar players, and the vast majority of investors is unknown. And there are certain things you are not allowed to openly talk about or criticize on X. Certain countries, religions, and ethnicities you're not allowed to really criticize, or you'll get banned. Could it be that reflects the true owners of the X corporation, which owns Twitter, 80% of it, versus the 20% that Elon owns? Could it be that people are seduced into a personality cult? Does Elon Musk, through his various corporations, hold huge government contracts? Since when? Since when do rebels do billion-dollar contracts with the government? Sorry, I'm just asking questions here. questions that, that make me wonder. It's not hard to find these facts, by the way. And if you listen to Trump, most people's admiration now and almost worship like love for him isn't based anymore on any good deeds that he might have done while in office. It isn't based anymore on policies or economics or whatever was better while he was in office. It is based on a almost irrational cult-like behavior where everything he says and does is ultimately wonderful. And there's this cognitive dissonance. You look at Operation Warp Speed and you go, how do you reconcile things? How do you bring that into the same arena and say, oh, it was just absolutely wonderful on all levels? Where's the critical thinking in that? Can we say that a person has done some really good things, but also see the other things that are very, 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 very disturbing and troubling? Can we not do that? Because if we can't do that, we will fall for the same thing over and over again. And if someone like Trump, you listen to his speeches and he says so often, only I can do this. I'm the only one who can save this. I'm the only one who can bring this about. How does that make people feel? And why would this quote unquote elite, self-proclaimed elite, want to support that and amplify that message? Think about what happened with Martin Luther King. One guy that shouldered, in the perception of the public, the civil rights movement for African Americans, shouldered it. He was the face. He was the voice. He was the everything. And did the media, did everybody else help build him up? Of course they did, because they knew eventually they could kill him. And with killing him, they have put the knife in the heart of the movement. Not that it died with it, but the shock and the void, the huge void that it left. Because people were so fixated on one figure versus the empowerment of every individual change and actions, and responsibility of the individual to support these changes. And we see the same thing now. I'm not saying this is a 100%. A lot of people have stepped up, and a lot of people are stepping into school boards and other important positions to facilitate change. But the vast majority puts all of their hope, all of their faith in Trump. And we don't know what the fate of this man is, and we don't know what really drives him. We don't know what he really wants with all that power that he's amassing. I don't know. So what I do know is that there is a psychological operation that screams loud and clear that it is an operation and that it is based in a personality cult. And this never helps. I'm the last person who's ever going to tell you, I'm your solution, I'm your savior, stick with me and you'll be fine. You'll get the truth every day. Well, hell no. Hell no. I don't want that. I see all of us as equals. We're born with the same rights. We're born with the same value. And some people are called to do this, and some people are called to do that. I'm not on a pedestal. I'm not more important than anybody else, and I don't want to be. And please, I encourage you to look into the mirror and acknowledge the beautiful individual expression of divinity that you are. And look into the mirror and tell yourself, if nothing else, you got this. Every day in every way, I'm getting a little better. Every day in every way, I'm living more and more of my purpose. Every day and every way, I'm discovering more of who I am. Have that conversation with yourself. I believe in you. I don't believe in a president and a prime minister and a Congress. I believe in you. I believe in my brothers and sisters out there. I believe in the discovery of who we really are and applying that and bringing that to the game, and ultimately love and unity and harmony and freedom will prevail, and they will be at the forefront of this all. And that will be the dominant vibration on Earth. Eventually, we will bring that about. And so we have to go through these motions. We have to see the truths for what they are. We have to help others see them, and we have to help them get inspired and see that there's so much more than they've been told, so much more that they've been shown. That's the path of discovery we're on. And that's why I won't stop talking about these things, not because I want to focus on the bad, but because I have seen what can happen when people now know clearly what is going on, what they don't want, and they shift over to what they actually want. It's so powerful. It's the most beautiful and humbling and amazing experience to see that and see how people shift their lives. Nothing inspires me more. All right, my friends, please remember, we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. That is the mantra. And we will not stop until we get there. Much love to you. Many blessings. We'll be back with you again very, very soon.